Here's the dirty secret about franchising. Most brands don't make it past 10 units. And it's not because they can't find franchisees. It's because they've built this system on a house of cards that just crumbles the second that they have to scale. So if you're sitting at 5 to 10 units and wondering why your growth feels like such a grind right now, this is the episode for you. I'm breaking down the real reason why these brands stall and what the breakout players do to go from 10 to 50 and 50 to 100. So let's get into it. All right, if you guys listen to the show every week and you haven't subscribed or you haven't left a review, I need to ask you for that favor right now. I know that a lot of you guys listen to the show and don't do it. I don't do it for the shows I listen to, so I get it. But in order to support what we're doing, the simplest and totally free way to do that is by hitting the subscribe button and or leaving a quick review. And it's something that I have, quite frankly, completely ignored for the first 5 years of doing the show, but I have recently learned why it's important. So when you subscribe or leave a review, the algorithms, the platforms take notice, which means they push the show out to more people. More people see the show, we can attract bigger guests, and we can level up our production. If you do that for me, my promise to you is that I will do everything in my power to make sure this show gets better every single week. We have a lot to talk about, a lot to discuss, and we need your help in getting the show out to more people. So we'll read your feedback, we'll bring on the guests you want to hear from, and we'll continue to improve the show. Thank you so much for your continued support. It really means a lot. Guys, welcome back to Close Monday, the only show that helps restaurant entrepreneurs navigate growth and real estate. Thank you for coming and checking us out before the 4th of July holiday. I know you guys have a lot going on, so thanks for checking us out. And this is an important one. This is an important episode because a lot of founders think that the key to growing their business is funding. They need more money. And that's not always the case. There are several other things that come into play here that are standing in their way. So I think it's important to have some context. So as we kind of get into this episode, I want to give you a couple stats and a couple scenarios that I've seen play out on both the successful side and the not so successful side, and really put you in a mindset of, all right, how can I avoid this? And maybe you realize this makes sense as to why I'm stuck. The statistics say that something like 87% of emerging brands, emerging meaning like smaller brands that are hot, but they don't have the scale and they're really trying to become the next, major franchise. So 87% of those franchises stall under 20 units. Now that is a symptom of a system failure. Meaning these founders who started these companies often think that leads, more franchisees, more money are going to solve all these things, but the actual problem is their infrastructure. What have seen, and to their credit, and something that I deeply respect, are these brands are built on founders' sort of hustle and emotion and the passion that they've had for the brand, right? We just saw this with Dave's Hot Chicken, a tremendous success story. That was built on a lot of passion and a lot of hustle. The founder is now the only person, the sole source of all of the SOPs, all of the recipes, all of the bookkeeping. To a certain extent, it gets sort of disseminated out into the small team that he or she may have built. But in general, they're the kind of the source of everything. And if you're trying to scale, that's the exact opposite of what you need to do. You need people to help you scale this business. So they typically find like the first 3 to 5 units, and they're hustling, but they love it, right? That's what keeps you going. That adrenaline, that feeling that this is my business, I'm building it, it's all happening. That is what kind of keeps them moving along. And again, admirable, but it's really when actually the system starts to break under your own weight, because you can only handle so much. And with no centralized team and no real consistent source of data for everybody to be looking at in terms of how the store is performing, those KPIs that everybody looks at, and really where we're headed next, right? You're growing a franchise that's very complex when it comes to building out a pipeline in terms of who's going to own what territory, who's going to be managing that territory, if that's your model. But in general, there's no playbook. And just like anything else, when there's no playbook, it becomes complete chaos. And that's something that, if you're in this situation right now, is take a step back from your daily grind and focus on building out those playbooks. That would be my number one suggestion if that's where you're at right now. And I think one of the things that really gets in their head is like, well, if I had more franchisees, they could take some of this weight. But that really makes almost no sense if you think about it. Now you're just adding more people who don't know what to do to the process. And if that's the case, you're just going to magnify these cracks in your system, and it's going to make the growth next to impossible. You're just going to have this larger group of immature restaurants that don't really know what to do, or they're all doing their own thing. And that's not ideal at all. So in that case, it's going to be more franchisees, more headaches. Nobody wants that. From the franchisee's perspective, I mean, think about that for a second. They are investing in this brand thinking that, okay, I like the concept. They're going to show me what to do. I don't need to worry. But if they start to see those cracks, you're going to start having some major issues with your brand. People are going to start talking, hey, these guys don't really have their act together. They don't know what the hell's going on behind the scenes. I don't know if you guys, I wouldn't invest in here if I were you. And that is a behind the scenes, slow drip to death. As these talk at conferences, a lot of them know each other. That type of death of a brand is slow and expensive. Make sure you're taking a look at those playbooks. And let's just be clear. I'm not trying to make it seem that growth is just this linear line. I get it. It's ups and downs, but you got to do everything you can to help yourself in that situation. Franchising will magnify any sort of operational problems. So if you don't identify them, those peaks and valleys are going to be gigantic. And like I said earlier, costly. So when you're in what seems like the ultimate chaos, you're going to have complete dysfunction in your next couple locations. And that's where you start reaching out to equity partners and you start trying to find larger franchisees. But the reality is you only have one person to blame, and that's you. All right. So now what do you do? What do you do? How do you even start to put these playbooks together? What does that look like? And if you're a franchisee listening to this, or a potential franchisee listening to this, you're going to want to ask for this information up front and really take a look under the hood, if you know what I mean. Because I'll say it again, and I'll say it every single day. Not all these brands are what you think. And there are some brands that you guys are maybe not considering who are more buttoned up simply because they don't have some of the stuff that is making them seem sexier to you. Okay. So let me just talk about what I've seen and what I've experienced. When it comes to some of these brands, some are overbuilding and some are underbuilding in certain different areas. And in my experience, again, I hate to keep saying it, but in my experience, so much money is spent on very flashy presentations for franchisees, the marketing decks, the lead generation to attract franchisees. There's a lot of energy and a lot of money put into that type of stuff. But behind the scenes, they're not building the bones that they need to support that. So best case scenario, you get a huge influx of franchisees, but now what do you do, right? You know, I'll tell you from the real estate perspective, well, you hand them over to the real estate guy. Okay, well, I need to go back to the corporate and say, can we talk about what our criteria looks like here? Because this is pretty general. And there's a lot of things we have to talk about. You know, if you're a coffee concept, well, I got news for you. I don't know what you told these guys, but the growth is going to be a challenge. Things like exclusives get in the way, right? You'll be surprised. A lot of centers have exclusivity on, a lot of brands rather will have exclusivity on things like coffee that you don't think are coffee concepts. Obviously, you see a Starbucks, you see a Dunkin' Donuts, there's going to be a problem in that center. But you got to dig deep. You got to find out what the possibility is in some of these centers for you guys to do your concept. So going back to them and trying to get that information, now we're going backwards. That stuff should be boom. You're working with us. Here's the site criteria. Here's our pitch deck. Here's the landlord's work letter. Here's our rider. Here's everything that we need for you to have rather in order to grow the brand correctly. So in my opinion, they're overbuilding on franchisee attraction, and they're also overbuilding on marketing stuff when they don't have all these other things in order. But what I do see on the positive side, not to be all negative here, on the brands that can successfully go from, let's say 2 to 10, or 5 to 10 or 5 to 15. SOPs and everything are well documented. Every new franchisee starts from the same point. And the support in the field it's there for you every step of the way. It's strategic. It's not there to be like, hey, if you need me, give me a call. It's like, hey, here's where you are. This is what's going to happen next. I'll check in with you next week. Have you been connected to this person? Have you been connected to that person? And the founders are really sort of pulling away, right? You're not seeing them as much. They're probably to the point where they have now matured to a more oversight role, and that's fantastic. And these successful brands are working with things like dashboards, project management systems, shared views of different aspects of the business, particularly real estate, right? They see what's being presented to these guys. They see what the comments are. That total transparency makes a huge difference when you're a newly formed team that's trying to grow. You want to know at a moment's notice where you're at. How many LOIs do we have? How many leases do we have? What's under construction? What's in permitting? That type of stuff is major. And I think everything's going to eventually head that way. But the good groups have been doing it, with duct tape and bubble gum, meaning like Google Sheets, Dropbox. But, like at 10rep, we have a fully built out platform where you guys can come in and you can see everything from day one. I mean, that's the way it's supposed to be. You got to be able to understand that this system is here to support me. And this is what it looks like. This is what the first level of support looks like, because you pay that franchise fee. Now you're out on the road trying to find sites. And let's just say you guys don't have the best taste in real estate or an understanding of what it takes. So having somebody by your side to help you navigate that is critical. Are you a growing franchise caught in the real estate trap? You know you need experienced real estate leadership to grow, but you're facing an impossible choice. You either have to hire a full-time director of real estate at $200,000 a year, or risk your brand's future with generic commercial brokers who don't understand the restaurant business, nor do they understand franchising. The cost of getting it wrong is staggering. Check this out. 72% of emerging brands cite real estate delays as their number one challenge, with each delayed opening burning through about $48,000 in lost revenue every single month. Poor locations don't just hurt the profits, they can permanently damage your franchise's reputation. That's where 10rep comes in. We've created a revolutionary solution that gives you senior level real estate expertise at a fraction of the cost for a full-time hire. Our flexible month-to-month model combines deep operational experience, cutting-edge AI, and nationwide network of franchise specialized brokers, all without the burden of salaries, benefits, travel, office expenses, or even long-term contracts. Join successful brands who trust 10rep to turn real estate from a growth challenge into a strategic advantage. Whether you need full service management or project-based support, we scale with you. Don't let real estate hold your franchise back. Visit www.10rep.co to learn how 10rep can help you scale smarter. That person is obviously. So how do you do it? How do you do it as a franchisor? How are you going to say, okay, we're a mess. We got to get this together. What do I do? Who do I need to bring on board to help me out here? In my opinion, you need a franchise business coach, at least to get you to the first couple of units. Number one, it gets the founder out of the process. The founder can step back now and they're not fielding every call and they're not solving every operational issue. They're not doing all the site tours. You're now at a place where it's scalable. You freed him or her up to do other things. That franchise business consultant becomes the primary point of contact. They are dealing with the franchisee calls. They're pointing them in the right direction. And if there is an issue where they can't get an answer, they can now go back to the founder who's freed up to answer those questions. Whereas before, it was a little bit more like, yeah, okay, I'll get back to you by the end of the day. I got to help these guys with that type of stuff. That's something you got to avoid. That's something that's never going to work for you. So what it does is it turns your support into a strategy. It's like, oh, hey, new franchisee, meet our franchise business coach. They are essentially your hotline for anything related to franchisee type of problems. Really, their goal is to help you get into your units, help you understand what our philosophy is and what our criteria looks like. And that includes real estate and profitability and build out and all that stuff. They're going to be there to help you put that stuff in place because they are also in charge of driving the economics of these stores. They want to make sure you're set up from day one in a store that A, you can afford, and B, you're in an area where you're going to do the business. And if you're not doing the business, they're also going to be there to find out what's going on. So they're going to enforce those SOPs. They're going to drive brand standards. And again, things that the founder was able to do when there's 1 or 2 units, maybe even 3 units, but now it's not even an option. It's just not. They will also be able to tell you about issues with training. Because as I've seen before, corporate has an idea of how this training is going to go. And then when they get out there and it's actually happening, things don't always go as planned. So this person, they have the bandwidth to say that part of training, not working out so well. We want to make sure we're doing this, that, and the other thing as opposed to what's happening now. We thought it was going to be great. Let's fix it. Okay. Again, somebody who's got their hand on the pulse. So the founder is focusing on new avenues of growth or exploring new markets or new footprints or enhancing their digital, whatever, right? They're not focused on everyday day-to-day activities. So this person to me is super, super key. And if you're kind of wondering, how do you find these people and what does that look like? Look to other brands, ask around. You can find somebody who can help you with that. And they are going to help you put those KPIs in place. But what they're really going to do is help you hold those franchisees accountable. Let's talk about accountability. While we're talking about accountability, there's some things now that thanks to technology, your life can be made a little bit easier. And automation is one of those things. So you have franchisee onboarding, and one of the most overlooked aspects that will hold you back from growth, in my opinion, is this onboarding process, because everybody is so focused on getting new franchisees, getting them to pay their deposit, getting them to, make sure the wire went through and are they active in the system, and et cetera, et cetera. I don't even know what that process really looks like, but that's what I hear on my end. But they got their money, they have their entity set up, they know their territory, et cetera. But now what? You can automate sending out all the training materials, all of the operations manuals, all the brand standards, all the vendor setup guides, all that stuff can be automated. You paid it, somebody checks a box on your system, and boom, they get everything. That would include me. Boom, hey, we just signed, Joe and Mary Smith to Akron, Ohio. Here's the steps that we need to follow. Here's the brand deck. Here's the LOI template. All of that stuff happens right away. So now your franchise sales executive can get back out there and focus on what they need to focus on. That opening checklist, the equipment stuff, all of that can seem very heavy and we got to make sure we get it over to them. And I can just imagine behind the scenes what that looks like. Very simple. Spend 1 hour today. Google Zapier automations, Google make.com automations. You can set it up so hey, they just signed on. They're automatically now going to get this whole set of things. Well, their broker, they're going to get this. And then you're off and running. It's just a matter of what I always talk about, speed and efficiency and eliminating friction. And if you can do that, it leads to a more consistent franchisee experience. As soon as I signed up, they sent me that link. Right? You've been involved in other, has you guys been on a call with something and they're like, hey, I'm going to send you that link right now. And right after the call ends, boom, you get that whole email. Most likely that's an automation. Those little missteps are costly. Very costly is the word I was looking for. They're very expensive. I may have mentioned this on the show before, it's in one of our pitch decks, that every month of delay for every store, so meaning every store that's delayed 1 month, it costs the franchisor almost $50,000. So that math is staggering. Even if you're going to open up 20 units this year, imagine if you're delayed a month or two on each one of those stores, what that looks like. This is where, if you don't have those, this is like another friction point where if you don't have that in place, you have to loop the founder back into this. If you don't have a franchise business coach, you have to loop the founder back into this chaos, and they don't want that. Nobody wants that. So focus on finding those friction points. Maybe it's not on this part of the process. Could be another part. So I think that this is where is a good point to start to look at, see, could we get better here? And maybe you have buttoned up, maybe you don't, but I think ultimately that's the place where you want to kind of start that. Your onboarding is really the first test and really your franchisee's first exposure to your systems. Think about that. Big difference if you sign up, you wire over your money, and 5 minutes later you have a link to everything that you need to get started versus, we'll send it over to you as soon as possible, and you send it over a week later. Those are two completely different systems, two very different stories that they can tell about the process of working with you. So make sure you get it right. I mean, if you want some real world strategies on how this can work, DM me, send me an email. I'll be happy to talk you through it. But that is something you should be doing hands down. Super simple. There's probably a teenager in your house that can help you set it up. And now let's go into what I normally would have here for a guest, which is the reality check for the real estate. So real estate reality check. Here's how it goes. I'm a broker. I'm working with a franchise concept, and I have to approach a broker on the other side, or I'm speaking to the landlord. Their first question is, what is this brand? Maybe they heard of them, maybe they haven't. I deal mainly with smaller emerging brands, so more often it's the case they haven't heard of them. I tell them, I'll send them a pitch deck. I'll send them a bio about who the owner is of this franchise, their financials, and this way they have an understanding of who they're going to be dealing with. Now, we don't give them all the financials, which is a very simple sort of like personal financial statement. And we also give them a blurb on the support that this franchisee will get in setting this store up. That's hugely important. They may be like treating this person as a first-time restaurant operator, and I get it. A lot of concerns there. But if it's backed up with this is how the franchisor supports them, that helps a lot. So if you're a franchisor, make sure you are sending your franchisees out into the market prepared, because right now they're getting slaughtered. There is no chance for a lot of these guys, based on their credit, based on their experience, based on their financials, they are not going to get what you think is the best real estate, period. There's too much competition for those sites. So your job is to make sure that they're buttoned up and you're handing them off to the real estate person who can now tell that story and make sure that that information is getting over to the landlord timely. That again shows your process. It may seem like a heavy lift when you have all these franchisees. Things like automation, artificial intelligence, all of these things can help you get there. So I would stop stressing it and instead focus on how you can get to a solution using some of this technology. And frankly, focus on making sure that these franchisees are not hitting the market prior to having all this stuff buttoned up. Now, my team, we do full site surveys. We do market surveys. We do complete breakdown of the franchisee's situation, because you need to be able to speak intelligently to the people in the market about what's going on. So if you are a franchisee or a franchisor who have an issue with this particular part of the process, send me a DM, send me an email, and I can walk you through how to get that done. My team and I can help you build out some of these markets. We can help you analyze some sites against your brand criteria. And that is something we focus on and find hugely, hugely beneficial for our clients. So that is where I would leave you guys today. Make sure you are dealing with a franchise that has their processes buttoned up, not just in your, because I know you guys look right from the beginning, from training and what it looks like, their marketing and going forward and the AUVs and all that stuff. But the fact is the process starts the day you sign that agreement and send the money, and what the franchisor is willing to do for you. And franchisors, what are you doing and why are you not getting them there? Because this is the exact reason why you're not growing. You're not set up to grow. You're not ready for a franchise system. You now have the great concept. You have a founder who's passionate, and now you have to build something that can be packaged in a box and handed off to people across the country to run exactly the same. Because that continuity of experience, it's a whole other episode, is what's going to make or break your brand. Everything's got to be consistent from one store to the other. So that's it. That's what I got for today, guys. Make sure you're doing your homework. Make sure you are not signing leases without understanding exactly what goes into them. If you have any questions about any of that stuff, please feel free to DM me or shoot me an email, and I'll be happy to walk you through any of it. All right. Have a great day. Enjoy the 4th this weekend. Be safe and put on your sunscreen, because hopefully you're getting outside. You're not working in your restaurant. Enjoy with your family and friends, and I'll see you guys next week.